Hi, and welcome to our leadership series where we're going to cover topics that help you as a student organization leader help to lead your organization to success. I'm Lauren Hill, the Director of Student Involvement, and this topic today is going to be over Constitution and Bylaws. So what is a constitution and why do we have to have it? Well, the purpose of your organization's constitution is so that you can contain in one place all of the fundamental principles that govern your organization and its operations. A constitution is going to serve to clarify your purpose, outline your basic structure, and provide a cornerstone for building an effective organization. It's also going to allow for members and potential members to have a better understanding of the organization's purpose, mission, as well as how you function. Think of function as like your blueprint. How do you guys work? What do you do on a day-to-day basis? How do you do things? And how do you get things done? What then are bylaws? Well, the purpose of your bylaws are to act as a more detailed rules for how your organization functions day to day. Your constitution may cover more fundamental principles, but not the actual procedures for operating are included in your constitution. Your bylaws are actually what you can utilize to outline in detail the procedures the organization must follow to conduct business in an orderly manner. They can also provide further definition or definitions of the Constitution and also can be changed more easily within your organization. Bylaws must not contradict any provisions allocated in your Constitution. The function then of your bylaws is to serve as your operating manual for the execution of the student organization's day-to-day going-ons. This then ensures that your procedures are clear, concise, and can help you to run your organization smoothly. So then, does my student organization need to use a constitution or bylaws? Well, really in short, you can use both. You don't have to, but you can. Think of it this way. Your constitution provides the core mission and structure of your organization, whereas your bylaws are going to help you handle your procedural details and their execution. Both are really important for ensuring that your organization has a clear and consistent framework to operate efficiently. The Office of Student Involvement, we accept either or in your re-registration process, but again, we highly suggest looking at utilizing both. The Office of Student Involvement also recommends that you annually review your organization's constitution or bylaws. Regularly reviewing these documents is really important because your organization's needs can evolve over time. This process can also easily be incorporated into your annual re-registration process that occurs each February 1st and closes the following September 1st. What this means is you should probably look at reviewing your organization's constitution or bylaws anytime you're setting up for a new officer transition, as well as when you're re-registering your student organization. Additionally, our office asks that you upload any updates to your constitution or bylaws to your organization's Tech Connect page under the Documents tab. This is a great resource for your organization to utilize as a storage hub. This way, you always have a copy of your constitution or bylaws accessible somewhere. Additionally, you can ensure that that Documents tab is locked for just your members or executive members as you see fit. So it's important to note that today we're going to be explaining the key elements of your student organization constitution or bylaws that are required by Section N of the Texas Tech Student Handbook. This is also what's required of your student organization's constitution or bylaws for our office during your annual re-registration process. This is going to use a fake organization today. Please don't copy and paste from right here. This is a great framework for you, including suggestions of requirements, but this is not the exact model that you are expected to utilize today. If you have any questions after our presentation here today, please make sure to email us at studentorgs@ttu.edu. What then are the required elements for your student organization's constitution and bylaws? We need you to include the name and purpose of your organization, as well as membership requirements, selection processes, member accountability, and removal processes. We also need you to include our anti-discriminatory statement. Please note this is the one thing that we need you to have in there verbatim that you can find on our website is this anti-discriminatory statement. Next, we need you to ensure that you have all officer titles and duties. At the very minimum, you must have a president and treasurer. Next, we need you to have officer election and removal processes. These removal processes are very important. If an officer is not doing their job, how do we ensure that we get someone into that position who is? Let's also ensure too that we leave opportunities for them to continue being a member of the organization. They may just not be a best fit for being an officer at this time. Next, we need you to include any departmental or external relationships. What this means as a great example is maybe you have a close relationship with a department. You're in an academic organization that works very closely with the Rawls College of Business. Please include that. Or an external relationship example might be that you work very closely with a local church or religious organization. We need you to disclose that information in your constitution or bylaws. Next, we need for there to be financial procedures. How are you going to handle funds from membership dues or fundraising activities? Next, procedures for decision making, such as quorum and voting procedures, faculty, staff, advisor selection processes, as well as expectations for them to act as your advisor, and of course, any kind of parliamentary authority. The most common we see across campus is Robert's Rules of Order. So today we're going to be using our bubble blowing student organization as an example. So what it might look like for this student organization is section 1. The name of this organization shall be, for example, the Bubble Blowing Association at Tech. Please note, it's very important that your student organization cannot include the following in its name: Red Raiders, Texas Tech, TTU, Recum, or Texas Tech University. You are allowed to use just the word Raiders or Tech. For example, I cannot be the Bubble Blowing Association at Texas Tech, but I can be the Bubble Blowing Association at Tech. This is because the university has trademarked these words, so it would be copyright infringement if you were to use them. Section 2, this is where you can identify any affiliations with national, regional, or any other kind of groups. Be sure to specify what the relationship with them is between your Texas Tech student organization and these groups. So let's look down now at our example. The name will be the Tech Bubble Blowing Society, which is a student organization here at Texas Tech University. And we're going to be affiliated with the Association of International Bubble Artists, AOIBA, which promotes the art, science, and entertainment of bubbles. Now, under Article 2, let's look at describing our purpose of our organization. For example, you can start off easily with stating the purpose of our organization shall be to blank. Fill it on in here. The best thing that you should know about your purpose is to be as detailed as possible, because these are the actions that you're limited to. So at the very least, here's our example for the Bubble Blowing Association. The purpose of our organization is to bring together Texas Tech students who enjoy blowing bubbles or who are interested in participating in bubble blowing competitions. The next article we should really harp on is membership requirements. What does it take to be a member of our bubble blowing group? Here's a great example. Membership under Section 3, Article 3. Members must be interested in the art of blowing bubbles. They must represent the organization and TTU in a positive light at all times. They must be either an undergraduate or graduate student of any major. It's important to note here with item C that only students can be members of organizations. You are not allowed to have alumni membership or faculty staff membership. Here's another few examples of membership requirements as well for you too. Continuing under Article 3 for membership requirements, here is that anti-discriminatory statement. It's very important, again, as we mentioned, to have this here explicitly in your constitution or bylaws. The example is something that you can completely copy and paste and insert your student organization name into. A special note as well, the only exception to defining membership in a student organization, if registered, is created primarily for religious purposes, and they may restrict rights to vote or hold offices to those who subscribe to the registered student organization's religious beliefs. All student organizations, though, who are registering as a single-sex social fraternity or sorority have to obtain an exemption from the Title IX office, and this must be provided to the Office of Student Involvement if you're seeking that kind of membership selection restriction. Continuing under Article 3 for membership selection, here are a few examples of some great ways for members to show their interest in your organization, such as first, prospective members must request to join the organization through your respective Tech Connect page. They must fill out potentially a questionnaire. Information about dues can also be collected on these forms. And then again, too, as long as these two processes are done, they can become a member of your organization. As we continue through Article 3, let's now move on to membership requirements, but more specifically, membership accountability as well as removal processes for members. This is an extremely important section of your constitution or bylaws, because if there's ever a conflict within your student organization and you are wanting to address removing a potential member, our office, the Office of Student Involvement, is going to hold you to the processes and procedures that you set forth within your constitution or bylaws. Meaning, if you don't follow your own constitution or bylaws, our office will need to reinstate that member and you will not be allowed to remove them. Here's a few examples from A to E of what you should include potentially in your removal process. Again, membership accountability as well as removal processes are highly important. Here's a great example of what it looks like to utilize a warning, probation, and finally a removal process within your student organization. Now let's move on to Article 4, Officer Titles and Duties. Section 1 under Article 4 should be a list of all the titles of organization officers. Make sure not to leave any out. Next, Section 2, review the duties of each officer and ensure that you're listing as many of them as possible for each officer. Be as detailed as possible here to ensure that each officer knows what they are required to be accomplishing for your student organization. A great example of a duty for the treasurer, for example, or SORC representative, depending on what you think is best, is to remind those officers specifically to do the annual Student Government Association budget process so you can receive funding from SGA. Next is Article 5, Officer Elections and Removal Processes. Just as important as it is to have a process for a member to join your organization, your election process is just as important. Same with your removal process for an officer. These should be as detailed as possible so that you can ensure that this process is easy to follow. Specifically when it comes to a potential officer removal, having these processes in place is heavily important. Just as I mentioned with a membership removal, officer removals must follow what is set forth in your constitution or bylaws. If your organization has an interest in removing an officer, they must be followed verbatim. Otherwise, that individual could potentially be reinstated back in their position. Next is Article 6, Departmental or External Relationships. It's important to note if you don't have any departmental relationships or external relationships, you do not have to include this section in your constitution and bylaws. But for example, let's look at some departmental relationships that the Bubble Blowing Society may have. We actually have a relationship with the College of Visual and Performing Arts. The relationship includes potential advisors coming from that college, artistic guidance, and also opportunities for funding from the college. As for external relationships, the Bubble Blowing Society has a relationship with the National Bubble Blowing Federation. The relationship includes an annual membership that we pay, as well as entering the organization into regional and national competitions hosted by the Federation. Article 7, Finances. This is a very important section as well. For example, Section 1, we have an example of how the collection of funds will be handled, and further breaking it down into membership dues, as well as how and who will collect those funds and utilize them. Also, any additional funding opportunities. For example, for the bubble blowing opportunity we receive funding from Student Government Association as well as the College of Visual and Performing Arts. Moving on to the next section is then how we manage those funds, how costs are incurred and who handles them, who can receive receipts, who processes those receipts, all of that needs to be handled here within the management of funds. And finally, for Section 3, how are we documenting our finances? How are we documenting that we're spending money, intaking money, etc.? Article 8, procedures for decision making. How are you going to make decisions for your student organization? I think it's very important here that you look at your meetings and decide on timing and the frequency of your meetings, as well as setting quorum. What does it look like for your organization to meet quorum? Is that 2/3 of your organization being in attendance? 50%? You can make that decision, and we have some examples here. The next section included in procedures for decision making needs to be your voting procedures. Is it decided by a majority vote of those who are in attendance so long as you meet quorum? That's for you here to make that decision of for your student organization. Article 9, advisor selection process and expectations. Now, every student organization that is registered within the Office of Student Involvement is required to have a faculty or staff advisor from Texas Tech University. First things first, how do you select an advisor? Do they have an interest in your organization? Here's a few examples from our Bubble Blowing Society to think of when selecting your advisor. Continuing with Article 9 for the advisor selection and expectations, what then are the responsibilities of your advisor? Do they need to come to every meeting? Do they need to be at any exterior events to the organization? Would you like them to be there when your organization has voting on the next executive board? Please note that you should really ensure that your advisor is aware of what they're signing on for when hopefully advising your organization. It's also important to note that any and all changes to the faculty staff advisor section should be made and edited within TechConnect 10 days after it has been voted on by your organization. And also your university advisor must be notified. If for whatever reason you are changing your advisor fully during the school year, in which it is not during the annual re-registration process, our office must be notified within 10 days of that as well too, so we can update that within TechConnect. Article 10, Parliamentary Authority. As mentioned earlier, the most common kind of parliamentary authority used by student organizations here on campus is Robert's Rules of Order. This is a parliamentary procedure that is very common across student government associations across the nation and student organizations. I highly suggest reviewing the process and seeing if it's something that works best for your student organization. Thank you for checking out this training on Constitution and Bylaws. If you're having any problems with drafting your Constitution or Bylaws, or have a question on if you have enough information in them, please feel free to reach out to our office at studentorgs@ttu.edu.